She didn't hear me walk in. The rain was still dripping from my coat when I stopped at the hallway corner just beyond the kitchen. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. The power outage at work changed that. And that's when I heard it. Her voice. No, he still doesn't know. He'd fall apart if he did. There was a pause, a long sip, the clink of a wine glass. God, it was just one night, okay? It meant nothing. It was stupid. I panicked. I didn't expect him to text me again. My breathing slowed. My fingers curled around the fabric of my sleeve. I leaned slightly to the side, just enough to see her back as she stood near the sink, facing away, phone to her ear. Still in her robe, hair damp. That same robe I bought her on our last trip to Asheville. She wore it the night we watched the snowfall in silence, and thought it meant something. Then came the next sentence. Casual, cruel, almost bored. I just don't think our whole family should fall apart over this. The word "our" hit me in the ribs like a bad joke. I nearly stepped forward, nearly revealed myself, but something held me there, frozen while she laughed at something he said on the other end of the line. He, the one who kissed her, the one she let kiss her. And I realized she wasn't confessing. She was managing damage control. It wasn't guilt. It was logistics. How to make sure I never found out. How to keep the kids unaware. How to keep her life from unraveling. She never once said my name. Only he. As if I were some problem to solve. Some fragile thing that might break if handled too roughly. I backed away slowly down the hallway, still dripping. The rain had soaked through my shoes. I stepped out the back door instead of the front, drove until the gas light came on, parked at the edge of a lake I hadn't seen since high school, watched the lights ripple in the water, and wondered how many other men had heard those same words. It meant nothing, and how many of them still believed it. I didn't go home that night. I slept in the car, or tried to. The back seat was cramped, the windows fogged up, and the cold crept through my damp clothes. But what truly kept me awake was the echo of her voice in my skull, over and over again. It meant nothing. Like a broken record that refused to die, as if my pain was a technicality, as if my loyalty, my quiet devotion, my willingness to shrink myself for her comfort was some invisible currency she'd spent without remorse. By morning, my phone had 5 missed calls, all from her, 1 text. Everything okay? Everything okay? She must have noticed my car wasn't in the driveway, must have waited for the sound of the door, the familiar shuffle of my keys, and when I didn't come in, when I didn't do what I always do, eat in silence, pretend the tension is just bad weather. She panicked. Good. I returned just after sunrise, parked down the block and watched our house from a distance. The kitchen lights were on. The coffee pot steamed behind the window pane. She moved like nothing had happened, hair tied up, pouring orange juice for the kids, smiling too wide, playing the part of mom like an actress trying to save a role in a collapsing series. I waited until they left for school. Then I walked in. She turned as I shut the door behind me. Number. Good morning. Number. Where were you? Just a tight, rehearsed look like someone who had already built her defense overnight. You didn't come home. Nope, I said. I hung up my coat slowly, let the silence stretch. She bit her lip. I was worried. I walked into the kitchen, picked up the same mug she used every day, the one that still had a faint lipstick mark from earlier, and placed it in the sink. Anything you want to tell me? I asked, staring at the counter. Not her. There was a pause. She exhaled sharply through her nose. About what? And there it was. The game. I turned, met her eyes. Dean. Her face didn't twitch, not at first, but her hands clenched slightly around the edge of the table. She sat down, tried to keep her voice steady. Noah, I didn't want to tell you like this. So you weren't going to tell me at all? It was just one night, she said quickly. It didn't mean anything. Then why did you tell him you wanted to see him again? Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her eyes searched mine for some trace of sympathy. The old Noah, the one who always forgave too fast, the one who folded instead of walked. But that Noah didn't come home last night. She leaned forward. Please don't blow this up. Don't throw everything away over a mistake. We have kids. We have history. Families don't break apart over one bad decision. I nodded slowly. Let that set. Funny. I never even got the chance to make one mistake. She got up suddenly, voice rising. What do you want me to say? That I hate myself? That it meant everything? It didn't. I was lonely. You've been distant for months. Because you stopped looking at me like I was still in the room, I said, my voice low. Because every time I tried to talk to you, you were already halfway somewhere else. She backed up, shaken by the calm in my voice. That's when I realized she expected me to explode, to scream, to cry, to beg. But I didn't, and that terrified her more than anything. I'll stay at Carlos for a few days, she said finally, grabbing her phone, her purse, her keys, and one practice sweep. You need time. I get it. Sure, I replied. Go, she stopped at the door. Please don't tell the kids. I didn't answer. And then she was gone. Just like that. The woman I built a life with, disappearing into a car I paid for, to stay with a friend who probably already knew everything. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, the same place where I once proposed with a note hidden in her cereal box, and realized something simple and sharp. The worst part wasn't that she cheated. It's that she already decided what role I'd play in the aftermath. The broken, harmless husband who'd keep the family glued together with silence. But I wasn't going to play along. Not this time. I didn't call her that night. I didn't text. Didn't ask if she made it to Carlos. Didn't check to see if she was safe. For the first time in years, I let the silence speak for me. And it was louder than I ever imagined. I spent the evening walking through the house like it was a crime scene. Every corner looked different now, warped by everything I couldn't unhear. Her voice on the phone, the calculated tone, the way she downplayed it all like we were some business deal gone slightly off course, like she could patch it up and move on, same as before. I found her gym bag by the laundry room. That detail matters because she told me it happened one night, that it was a moment of weakness, a mistake. But the gym bag told a different story. Inside was a change of clothes, perfume, mouthwash, a second phone charger, a pair of heels she never wore to work, and a hotel key card. Still active, I sat down on the floor and just stared at it. Not angry, not shocked, just hollow. The kind of hollow that doesn't scream, it hums. This wasn't spontaneous. This was rehearsed. This was prepared for. This was a routine. And I've been sleeping next to someone who built that routine like a second life. That night, I opened my laptop and did something pathetic. I Googled him. Dean. I remembered the name from the message, and after a bit of digging, I found his LinkedIn, his Instagram. He wasn't from the gym. He wasn't some guy she bumped into at the juice bar or flirted with on accident while spotting weights. He was a keynote speaker at a conference she attended last month. The marketing leadership retreat she was so excited about. The one she wouldn't stop talking about for days until suddenly, she never mentioned it again. His Instagram was full of pictures from that weekend. Hotel selfies, event photos, a rooftop dinner with string lights and champagne, and one blurry photo that broke me. It was her. Not a clear shot, just the back of her head, laughing, tilting toward him on a rooftop couch, that unmistakable rope-tied bunch she always did. Her laugh was practically audible through the screen. His caption read, "Unexpected company makes the best memories." That retreat was 2 weeks ago. She said it happened once. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking in the search bar, waiting for me to type something else. Instead, I closed the laptop and walked to the mirror in our bedroom. I looked old. Not just tired, old. Like a man who'd been waiting at the wrong door for too long. And then I did something strange. I took a photo of myself, just stood there expressionless. Click. I wanted to remember that moment. The version of me who finally knew everything and couldn't lie to himself anymore. I sent it to her. No caption. It was 2:07 a.m. She saw it, read it, didn't reply. The next morning she came back. I didn't expect her to. I heard the front door open while I was sitting in the living room sipping coffee that tasted like paper. She came in quietly like she lived here again. No bags, no explanation. Just walked in and sat across from me. She looked pale, nervous, eyes puffy, but not from crying, from lack of sleep or maybe guilt. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I didn't speak. I wasn't going to rescue her with words. Finally, she said, "Noah, I need to be honest with you." I leaned back, raised an eyebrow. It wasn't just once. There it was, like a cold knife placed slowly against my chest. "It was the conference," she continued, looking down. And then a few times after, I thought I could stop. I really did. But I didn't. I don't even know what I was thinking. I felt, I don't know, wanted, alive, and I'm sorry. I studied her face carefully, and what struck me was that she wasn't crying, not even close. Her voice cracked once, but there were no tears, no collapse, no breaking down, only discomfort, like someone confessing to stealing from a stranger, not betraying the man who held her hand through surgeries and panic attacks, not the man who cleaned the floors when she had the flu, not the man who sold his bike to help pay off her student loan. No tears, just that same soft, tired, managerial tone. "I'll do anything to fix this," she said. "Therapy, counseling. I'll block his number. I need you to not give up on me, on us. Don't let this ruin everything." I almost laughed. Ruin everything. I stood up, walked past her slowly, calmly, and I picked up her gym bag from the laundry room, still zipped, still packed with the truth. I handed it to her without a word. She stared at it, then at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear, because she finally understood. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to explain. I was leaving her with her silence, and she had no idea what I'd do next. The house sounded different without her in it. Not quieter, just different. The kind of silence that had a shape, a pulse, like it was aware of itself. Every drawer I opened felt like I was trespassing. Every cabinet door creaked a little longer than it used to. Her shoes weren't by the front door. Her coffee mug was gone. The scent of her hairspray no longer lingered in the bathroom, but her absence didn't feel clean. It felt like unfinished surgery. After I handed her the gym bag, the lie packed into nylon and zippers, she didn't fight. She stared at me like I was someone she had only just met and couldn't read. She said my name once. I didn't respond. She waited. I didn't move. Eventually she left, not in some dramatic huff, not slamming the door, not sobbing into a tissue. Just left, like she was slowly realizing she no longer had access to me. that the space she thought she could crawl back into had sealed behind glass. I took the next 2 days off work, said I had the flu. That wasn't far from the truth. I stayed home, unshaved, unshowered, didn't eat much. I spent hours just walking from room to room, seeing the little marks of our life. The chipped corner of the hallway wall from when we moved in. The burnt spot on the counter where she dropped a curling iron once. The den in the fridge from the time I tripped over the dog bowl. These things used to mean something to me. They were us. Now they were mine. Scars on a body I wasn't sure I wanted to live in anymore. I wasn't sad. I was stunned, stuck somewhere between memory and aftermath, like a man who wakes up during surgery, aware of the pain but unable to scream. I didn't tell anyone what had happened, not yet. I kept the lies stitched shut even when people texted to ask how we were. Even when her sister messaged me saying Leslie had a lot going on emotionally and hoped I'd be patient. Patient. I was patient for 17 years. I was patient when she stopped kissing me goodnight. Patient when she rolled away from me in bed for weeks at a time. Patient when I asked if she was okay and she told me she was just tired. Patient when I planned date nights. She canceled. Patient when I told her I missed her and she smiled but didn't answer. What else did they want from me? On the third day, she came back again. I was sitting in the garage, which had somehow become the only place I could breathe. I sat on the old wooden bench I used when I used to tinker with tools, even though I haven't built anything in years. I had a small heater on and a blanket wrapped around my shoulders like I was camping through a storm. I heard the car door before I heard her steps. I didn't look up when she opened the garage door. She stepped inside slowly. Noah? I still didn't look. I'm not here to fight or explain or defend anything. Still quiet, she inhaled. I could hear the tremble in it. I just came to ask one thing. Do you hate me? I finally turned. She looked small, not physically, but in presence, like a woman stripped of all her armor and only now realizing how thin her skin was. No, I said. Her eyes watered. Really? No, because hate means you still have a place inside me to live. And I emptied that room 3 days ago. She swallowed hard. So what happens now? I stood up, walked past her again. Not because I was trying to be dramatic, but because if I stayed in that moment 1 second longer, I might have cracked. But I stopped at the door. You don't get to ask what happens next, I said, my back still to her. Not yet. You gave up your place in this story the second you turned me into a footnote in someone else's fantasy. I went inside and closed the door gently behind me. She didn't follow. I don't know how long she stayed in that garage, standing under the flickering light above the workbench. I don't know what she felt. Maybe guilt, maybe regret, or maybe she was just stunned that I wasn't reacting the way she expected. I wasn't breaking. I wasn't begging. And I wasn't fighting for her. She had no script for that. That night, she texted, "If you want to talk, I'll be at Carlos." I'll wait. But I didn't reply because I was already writing my own story now. One where I'm not the afterthought or the fallback or the man who forgives just because it's easier than starting over. I didn't know what was coming next, but for once, she wouldn't be the one to decide. The 5th morning without her was the first one that didn't feel like drowning. I got up early, made coffee, opened the windows despite the cold, and let the air bite through me. It reminded me I was still here, that no matter how upside down everything had become, I hadn't disappeared. Even if she tried to write me out of the story like some inconvenient chapter she regretted, the silence had changed too. It was no longer hostile. It had become mine, a companion. Even like the house itself was exhaling now that it didn't have to hold the weight of her pretending. I decided it was time to clear out the bedroom. Not to erase her, I wasn't ready for that, but to reclaim it, at least partially. I boxed up her things carefully. I didn't trash them. I wasn't angry in that way. I folded her clothes, packed her books, collected her chargers and hair ties, and scattered earrings from the nightstand, like I was cleaning up after someone who died unexpectedly. Then behind the second drawer of her nightstand, I found them letters. Not to me, not even to Dean. They were written on pale pink stationery, the kind with tiny pressed flowers in the corners. Each folded twice, dated in the top right corner, and signed only with an initial. Some were addressed, "My love." Others started more cautiously. "You make me feel seen." I sat on the bed and read them one by one. There were 12 in total. The oldest was from 8 months ago. 8 months. She said it started at the conference. That was 2 weeks ago. But these were older. They weren't about Dean. Or maybe Dean wasn't just a name. Maybe he was a habit with different faces. One letter described a weekend she never told me about. I told him I was visiting my sister. She wrote, "But really, I needed a night with you. I needed to remember what it's like to want something that wants me back." I remember that weekend. I stayed home with our youngest who had a fever. I slept on the couch beside the humidifier and warmed up soup. She sent me a photo of her and her sister having brunch, smiling beside a plate of waffles. She was with someone else. In another letter, she wrote, "He never looks at me like you do. I don't know if that makes me selfish or just starved." I read that line 3 times. What did she mean? That I stopped looking at her with love? Or that I looked at her like a husband and she wanted to be looked at like a fantasy? I kept reading each letter a fresh punch to the gut. But one, the last one, it was dated just 3 days before I found out everything. It read, "I don't know how long I can keep this up. Noah is so gentle, so loyal, and he deserves someone who isn't this broken. But I can't stop. I want to. I swear I want to. But I don't even know who I am without this version of myself. I hate that he still smiles at me. I hate that I love him and still can't stop choosing someone else. I'm ruining him, and he doesn't even see it." I laughed out loud. A sharp, bitter sound that didn't even feel like it came from me. I didn't see it. I saw everything. I just didn't name it. I ignored it, made excuses, let the little things slide until they turned into landmines. But she knew, and she kept going anyway. That was the part that truly gutted me. Not the betrayal, not even the lies, but the fact that she watched me love her while actively walking away. Piece by piece, night by night, kiss by kiss that didn't belong to me. I didn't confront her about the letters. Not yet. I put them back exactly as I found them and slid the drawer shut. Let them sit like dormant ghosts in the nightstand drawer. One day, I would decide what to do with them. But that day wasn't a day. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed and wrote something I hadn't written in years. A letter to her. But I didn't call her my love. I didn't say, "I forgive you." I didn't even ask why. I just wrote one line carefully, neatly, in my own handwriting. "I was right here the whole time." Then I folded it once, sealed it in an envelope, and left it inside the drawer with hers. Because if she ever came back looking for the woman she used to be, Maybe she'd finally see the man she left behind. It was nearly 10 p.m. when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wasn't even dressed properly. Just an old hoodie, sweatpants, bare feet. The kind of clothes you wear when you're trying not to feel anything at all. I've been sitting on the couch watching some documentary I wasn't really following. The television glowing against a room that no longer looked like mine. That doorbell sound cut through the house like a knife. Sharp, out of place, unwelcome. I hesitated. Was it her? I hadn't heard from Leslie since that last message. I'll be carless. I'll wait. That had been 2 days ago, and even though I told myself not to care, my eyes had been checking the driveway every morning, my ears tuned to every unfamiliar car that passed. I hated that part of me, the part still looking. I opened the door slowly and froze. It wasn't her. It was Carla, Leslie's best friend, the one she always called her sister in everything but blood. The woman who hosted the baby shower when our second was born, who helped us paint the nursery when Leslie was pregnant. Carla, who once told me that if Leslie ever hurt me, she'd personally throw her off a cliff. Jokingly, but with a fire in her eyes. She looked different tonight, worn down, tired in a way that didn't come from work or kids. The kind of tired you get when you've been sitting with a truth that doesn't belong to you. "Hey," she said quietly. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then nodded. She stepped in and looked around like she wasn't sure she was allowed to anymore, like the house had changed shape since the last time she visited. I gestured toward the kitchen and offered coffee, but she shook her head. "I won't stay long," she said, her voice tight. "I probably shouldn't even be here, but I can't keep my mouth shut anymore." I sat down across from her. The silence between us felt like loaded dynamite. "She told me it was just one mistake," I said after a moment. "That's what she wanted you to believe too, right?" Carla's jaw clenched. She didn't tell me anything, not at first. She was weird that whole week after the conference, fidgety, distracted. I asked if something was wrong and she said she was just exhausted. But then, I saw her one night at some wine bar on the North End. I looked up. She was with him, Carla said. I didn't recognize him, but they weren't just having drinks. They were in a booth, hands on each other, laughing like teenagers. She didn't see me. I swallowed hard. "I didn't tell you," Carla continued, "because I wasn't even sure what I saw. I told myself it might not be what it looked like. And then when she finally told me the truth, she came over crying one night. I asked her if she was going to tell you. She said she didn't know." "Didn't know?" I said, my voice breaking for the first time in days. "What was there to think about?" "She told me she loved you, that she couldn't lose the family, that it was a moment of weakness." "They always say that," I muttered. Carla leaned forward, her eyes locked onto mine. "Noah, I'm not here to defend her." That stopped me. "I'm here because she's still seeing him." I stared at her. She nodded slowly. "I wasn't sure at first, but then she left her phone unlocked one night. I saw messages, recent ones, plans, meetups. This wasn't over." "She's keeping you in the loop just enough to stall you, to keep you unsure. She's not choosing." I felt my stomach twist. She's playing both sides. Carla said she wants the family image, but she's addicted to whatever this man is giving her. I told her she's going to lose everything, and she just shrugged like she didn't believe you'd ever really walk. I stood up, pushed my chair back harder than I meant to. My breath came in quick, cold bursts. "She's not staying at your place," I said suddenly. Carla shook her head. "She hasn't stayed with me since the second night. She told you she would, but I think she just said that to keep you from asking too many questions." I walked toward the living room, pacing, trying to wrap my head around it. "So, where is she?" Carla hesitated. I think she's with him. I laughed once bitterly. Of course she is. Then Carla did something that cracked the room open. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. I found this in her car, she said. I debated whether to bring it to you. I probably shouldn't, but I'm tired of protecting people who don't deserve it. She slid it across the table. It was addressed to me. No stamp, no return address, just Noah written in her handwriting. I stared at it, my name suddenly foreign in her script. I didn't open it, not yet. Thank you, I said to Carla. She stood, nodded, and walked to the door without another word. Once she was gone, I sat back down, turned the envelope over in my hands. I considered burning it, tossing it, hiding it in a drawer like she had her truth. But eventually, I opened it. Inside was a single note, no salutation, no apology. Just one sentence. I'm not sure if I want to be saved anymore. I stared at it for what felt like an hour and realized that she wasn't writing to explain herself. She was warning me. The envelope stayed on the kitchen table all night, flattened open beside my untouched coffee. I read the sentence more times than I'll admit. I'm not sure if I want to be saved anymore. And each time it hit differently. Sometimes it sounded like a confession, other times like a challenge. But most of all, it sounded like freedom. Not for her, for me. She wasn't reaching for a lifeline. She wasn't calling out from some emotional abyss hoping I'd pull her back. She was walking into the fire with her eyes wide open and lighting the matches herself. There wasn't a part of her that was confused. She knew exactly what she was doing. And so did I. By sunrise, I made a decision I never thought I'd have the spine to make. I wasn't going to wait for her to come home again. I wasn't going to sit in this house like a man waiting to be chosen because I already wasn't. She just hadn't said it out loud yet. So I spent the morning doing what I should have done the moment she walked out with that lie about staying at Carlos. I started gathering receipts. I found the phone bill first. She never thought I looked at it, probably assumed I let the auto pay do all the thinking. But the numbers were there. Not just his, though I didn't know the number was his yet, but patterns. Calls at 6:43 a.m. when she said she was going for a run. Calls at 11:27 p.m. when she claimed she was finishing up a presentation. Long-wind, whining calls that lasted through our anniversaries, our son's birthday, even the night my mother went into the ER. That one hurt because I remember lying next to her in bed, crying softly, afraid Mom wouldn't make it through the night, and Leslie was holding her phone under the covers texting someone. Now I knew who. I dug deeper. I opened our shared cloud storage. Photos I'd never seen before, not of them together. Nothing overt. She wasn't that careless. But selfies in hotel rooms I didn't recognize. Outfits I never saw her leave the house in. A bottle of wine on a hotel nightstand, taken from an angle that screamed intimacy, even though it was technically just a glass. She documented her betrayals like trophies, carefully curated and just hidden enough to pass. But I saw them now. And then I did something that didn't come naturally to me. I called a lawyer, not to file anything yet, just to ask questions, to understand the cost of freedom financially, emotionally, legally. The woman on the phone was calm and clinical, but kind. She asked me if I was safe, if there was abuse. I said, no, not the kind you can see. She said, betray is a form of abuse too. That stuck with me. After the call, I sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling for what felt like an hour, and then I stood up and walked into the bedroom, pulled out my suitcase, the one I hadn't used since our 10th anniversary trip. and started packing. Not for a dramatic exit. For clarity, I booked a small ABN hour away, a quiet place near a lake. 2 nights just to think, just to breathe where her shadow wasn't taped to every surface. Before I left a single sheet of paper on the bed. No anger, no accusation. Just a list. A list of everything I had found. Call logs, dates, names, times. The final item was 1 line. You forgot I was quiet, not blind. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. She'd know. I turned off my phone before I left town. I didn't want the apologies, the bargaining, the false urgency. I didn't want her guilt disguised as love. I wanted silence, the real kind, the kind that didn't have to defend itself. When I arrived at the lake house, I sat on the small wooden dock out back. The water was perfectly still. No wind, no movement. Just me and my heartbeat, and the realization that I had survived. Not healed, not yet, but survived. And then, as if on cue, I heard gravel crunching behind me. Footsteps. At first I thought maybe it was the host, but when I turned, it wasn't. It was my oldest daughter, Ella, 17 years old, face pale, eyes wide with a mix of confusion and hurt, and something else I couldn't place yet. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," she said before I could ask. "She's tearing the house apart looking for you." I stood stunned. "How did you?" "I saw the Airbnb confirmation in the email. You forgot to log out." "Of course I did." "I needed to see you," she said, her voice trembling, "because I saw the list." My blood froze. She left it on the kitchen table. Maybe on purpose. I don't know. But I read it. I read everything. My heart ached. "Ella, you weren't supposed to." "I know what she did, Dad." Tears welled up in her eyes. "And I'm not going to pretend I didn't." She stepped forward, hugged me tight, tighter than she had in years. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't dared believe yet. I wasn't alone in this story. Not anymore. Ella and I sat on the dock until the sun disappeared into the lake. She didn't ask questions, and I didn't rush to explain. We just sat, father and daughter surrounded by still water, and the knowledge that the curtain had been pulled back not just on my marriage, but on the illusion we'd all been living in. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "I don't hate her. I want to, but I don't." "I know," I said. "She messed up bad, but it's not my job to fix it for her." "No," I nodded. "It's not mine either." That night we slept in separate rooms of the tiny lake house. I listened to the wind against the windows, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel like I had to brace for anything. No second phone vibrating under pillows. No emotionally choreographed apologies. Just quiet. The next morning, we packed up and drove back to the house together. I didn't know what I'd find. If Leslie would be there, if she'd run, if she'd left something final like a note or a lawyer's letter or some symbolic goodbye. But as we turned onto our street, it became clear. She was waiting. Her car sat in the driveway, the garage door open, the front porch light still on, even in daylight, like a beacon too late to matter. I told Ella to go in through the back and wait upstairs. She didn't argue. She gave me a long hug before slipping through the side gate. When I stepped inside, Leslie was sitting at the dining table, the same one where we once celebrated promotions, birthdays, anniversaries, now surrounded by silence and unread mail. She looked up and I saw something raw in her expression. She'd been crying, really crying. Not the kind meant to manipulate. The kind that comes from finally facing the version of yourself you'd rather avoid.
I thought you'd be gone longer.
She said. I thought about it. She swallowed. You left the list. I left the truth, I replied, pulling out the chair across from her. She nodded slowly, folding her hands in front of her. You were never the villain in this. I think that made it easier for me to become one. I said nothing. She continued. I told myself lies to justify what I did. That you didn't love me the same. That you were distant. That I was just chasing something harmless. But I knew every time I came home and saw the look in your eyes. I knew what I was doing. Again, I stayed quiet, let her sit with it. She reached into her purse and slid something across the table. Signed divorce papers. I won't fight it, she said. You deserve your life back. I stared at the papers for a long time. Then I looked at her. I'm not doing this to punish you, Leslie. I'm doing this because I can't stay in a life where I'm constantly being asked to doubt myself. I don't want to teach our kids that love looks like silence and second chances handed out like candy. She looked down, nodded through tears. I want us to be good parents, I added, separately if that's what it takes. I want to rebuild, but not this, not what we had. She exhaled a long, heavy breath, and then, surprisingly, she smiled. I never deserved how kind you've been through all of this. I wasn't kind, I said softly. I was quiet. That's different. We stood. She opened the front door without me asking, as if understanding this was her exit. Now, as she stepped outside, she paused. I hope you find someone who doesn't make you feel small. I didn't respond. I simply closed the door gently behind her. Weeks passed. The divorce went through smoothly. No screaming, no courtroom drama. We worked out shared custody. She found an apartment across town. Ella and her younger brother adjusted faster than I expected. There were tears, yes, but there was also relief. Like the whole house had been holding its breath and was finally allowed to exhale. I didn't rush into anything new. No dating apps, no rebound moments. I focused on being a dad, on fixing the broken fence in the backyard, on relearning how to enjoy the sound of my own thoughts. But one afternoon, maybe 2 months later, I walked into a bookstore downtown, the kind with creaky floors and coffee that tastes like nostalgia. And I met someone. Her name was Rowan. She was standing in the nonfiction aisle holding a book I'd read twice. We struck up a conversation. It turned into coffee, then walks, then laughter that didn't feel like an audition. She didn't ask about Leslie. I didn't lead with the story of betrayal. We just met where we were, and that was enough. Sometimes I still think about the moment I stood in that hallway and overheard Leslie say it meant nothing. And I realize now she was wrong. It meant everything, because it ended something that needed to end, and started something that never would have had the room to exist otherwise. She lost me quietly, and in the quiet, I found myself.